When the time of choosing comes, therefore, the choices available are far more diverse than those offered or possible to personalities who must still reincarnate. There is always the opportunity to teach if you have the inclination and the capabilities. But multidimensional teaching is far different than teaching as you know it now, and it demands rigorous training. Such a teacher must be able to instruct various portions of one entity in your terms at the same time. Say, for example, a particular entity has reincarnations in the 14th century, in 3 BC, in the year AD 260, and in the time of Atlantis. A teacher would simultaneously be in contact with these various personalities, communicating with them in terms that they could understand. Such communication demands a complete knowledge of the root assumptions of such eras and of the general philosophical and scientific climate of thought at the time. The entity might well be exploring several probable systems, too, and these personalities would also have to be reached and contacted. The amount of knowledge and training necessary makes such a teaching communicator career extremely demanding, but it is one of the courses available. The process of learning such information necessarily adds to the development and abilities of the teacher. A delicate manipulation of energy is required, and a constant travel through dimensions. Once such a choice is made, training immediately begins, always under the leadership of a practical expert. The vocation, for it is a vocation, leads such a teacher even into other realms of reality than those he previously knew existed. Others, finished with reincarnations and on a different overall nature, may begin the long journey leading toward the vocation of a creator. On a much different plane, this can be compared to geniuses in creative fields within your own physical reality. Instead of paints, pigments, words, musical notes, the creators begin to experiment with dimensions of actuality, imparting knowledge in as many forms as possible, and I do not mean physical forms. What you would call time is manipulated as an artist would manipulate pigment. What you would call space is gathered together in different ways. Art is created, then, using time, for example, as a structure. In your terms, time and space might be mixed. The beauties of various ages, the natural beauties, the paintings, and the buildings are all recorded as learning methods for these beginners. One of their main preoccupations is to create beauty that impinges itself in many various dimensions of reality as possible. Such a work would be perceived in your system as one thing, for example, but would also be perceived in probable realities, though perhaps in an entirely different way. A multi-dimensional art, you see, so free and elemental that it would appear simultaneously in many realities. Such an art is impossible to describe in words. The concept has no verbal equivalent. These creators, however, are so involved in inspiring those in all levels of reality available to them. For example, inspiration in your system is often the work of such creators. These art forms are often symbolic representations of the nature of reality. They will be interpreted in various ways according to the abilities of those who perceive them. In your terms, they may be living dramas. They will always be psychic structures, however, existing apart from any given system of reality, but at least partially perceived by many. Some exist in what you might term the astral plane, and you perceive them in visits during the sleep state. Others are perceived in glimpses or bits and pieces by your temporal mind while you are half sleeping and half waking, or in other periods of disassociation. There are various kinds of multidimensional art, and therefore many levels in which the creators work. The whole Christ story was such a creation. There are also those who choose to be healers, and of course this involves far more than healing as you are familiar with it. These healers must be able to work with all levels of the entity's experience, directly helping those personalities that are a part of it. Again, this involves a manipulation through reincarnational patterns, and here again, great diversification. A healer begins with reincarnational selves with various difficulties. The healing involved is always psychic and spiritual, and these healers are available to help each personality in your system as you know it, in your present time, and in other systems. In a larger context, and with greater training, advanced healers deal with the spiritual maladies of vast numbers of personalities. There are those who combine the qualities of teacher, creator, and healer. Others choose lines of development that are particularly suited to their own characteristics. I do not want to discuss the purpose of consciousness, continuous existence, or development in this chapter, however. I simply want to make it clear that vast possibilities of progress are possible, and to stress the fact that each personality has full freedom. The developments of consciousness that take place are natural attributes, natural stages. There is no coercion applied. All of the further developments are inherent in the personality that you know, even as the adult is inherent in the child. Now, these descriptions of after-death events may sound very complicated, particularly if you have been used to a simple tale of heaven or eternal rest. Unfortunately, the words fail to describe many of the basics that I would have you understand. You have within yourself, however, the ability to release your intuitions and to receive inner knowledge. As you read this book, the words are meant to release your own intuitional abilities. When you are reading it, your own dreams will give you added information and will be in your mind upon awakening if you are alert for them. There is no such simple end to the life that you know, such as the story of heaven. There is the freedom to understand your own reality, to develop your abilities further, and to feel more deeply the nature of your own existence as a part of all that is. And that concludes that chapter. And the next chapter is chapter 12, Reincarnational Relationships. Through your reincarnational existences, you expand your consciousness, your ideas, your perceptions, your values. You break away from self-adopted restrictions, and you grow spiritually as you learn to step aside from limiting conceptions and dogmas. Your rate of learning depends entirely upon you, however. Limited, dogmatic, or rigid concepts of good and evil can hold you back. Too narrow ideas of the nature of existence can follow you through several lives if you do not choose to be spiritually and psychically flexible. These rigid ideas can indeed act as leashes, so that you are forced to circle like a tied puppy dog about a very small radius. In such cases, though, perhaps a group of existences, through perhaps a group of existences, you will find yourself battling against ideas of good and evil, running about a circle of confusion, doubt, and anxiety. Your friends and acquaintances will be concerned about the same problems, for you will draw to yourself those with the same concerns. I am telling you again, therefore, that many of your ideas of good and evil are highly distorted and shadow all understanding you have of the nature of reality.